Hello once again and welcome to the Rapid Solution channel, where I show you very useful tips and tricks that makes your programming in VBA very exciting. I am Raphael Adeyemo. In today's tutorial, we are going to learn how to add right-click shortcut or pop-up context menu to a user form text box and be able to perform actions such as copy, paste, cut, and then undo. These actions are an integral part of the Windows operating system, and users of your VBA application expect to have them as well, but unfortunately they are absent from the VBA UserForm TextBox. I'll also show you how to write a class model for all the TextBox controls on the user form, so that you'll be able to apply the same code to all the text boxes on the user form instead of adding the code to the individual text box handler. Make sure to watch this tutorial to the end to learn this easier and better way to add a pop-up context menu to the user form text box while programming in VBA. Let me demonstrate to you how we can use this. Let me highlight all of this and then perform the first action, which is copy, and also right click again and paste it. Now let me highlight the whole thing again and then cut it and also paste. Now let me right click and then click on the undo button to see what happens. This is the action that we are going to learn how to perform in this tutorial. To begin with, open a new Excel workbook and click on the developer tab, and after that click on the Visual Basic to be taken to the Visual Basic editor. When the editor opens, go to the Insert tab and then insert a new user form. Now, with the user form, let me draw out a text box and place it on the user form. Go to the property window to increase the font size. It is not necessary, but I just want to increase the font size, so let me increase the font size to, let's say, 14 and click on OK. Now let us run the application to see what will happen if we perform the right click action on the text box. And then let me right click on it. When I right click on it, nothing happens to the text box. This is because I've not yet added a code that will let the right click pop-up context menu appear when I perform the right click action on the text box. And also the right click feature, which is present in Excel and other Windows application, is not present on the user form. But the good news is that we are going to learn how to add this feature to as many text boxes as present on the user form. So now let me return back to the VBA editor and continue from there. Now let me go back to the Insert tab and then insert a new model. In this module, I'm going to write a code that will call on the command bars of the Windows to add a pop-up to the text box whenever I perform the right-click action on the text box. So let me write this. Private sub show pop-up. And in between this, I'm going to write this application.command bars reset. So reset. Dim CBC as command bar controls. Okay, so now I'm going to write a for loop for it. So for each in application dot command bars control next CBC, then CBC dot visible equal to false. Application dot command bars control dot show pop up. So this line of code will let the pop-up show. Let me return back onto the user form and write this line of code for the text box click event. So let me double click on the text box to be taken to the code area. Now come to this drop down menu and change it to a mouse up event. let me write this if statement for the text box. If button is equal to 2. If the button is equal to 2, this means that you are pressing on the second button on the mouse, which is the right click. Then what should happen? Let me write an end if, and then write another if statement enclosed in this first if statement, saying that if button is equal to 2 and shift is equal to 0, then what should happen? End if. This is what should happen if these two if statements, or if this if condition is met. Then let us run the code that we wrote in the model. So let me go back to model 1 and highlight this, copy it, and then come back here, and so then I should run and paste. Let me run the form, and this time around let me perform the right click action on the text box to see. Now you can see that when I perform the right click action on the text box, a little pop-up shows close to where the mouse pointer is. The next thing we are going to do is to learn how to populate this pop-up with the necessary items like the cut, the paste, the undo, and the other things. You can populate it with as many items as you wish. Let me exit from here and then go back into the code. Let's go back into the module and then write this new subroutine. Let's write private sub. I'm writing this subroutine for the copy, so my copy. Inside the subroutine, let's write this send keys will be equal to this. Let me write the correct sign and then C, which stands for copy. This line of code works exactly the same way as you'd use the computer keyboard key combination of the control and then the C, the X, the Z, and then the V. The next thing that I have to do is to call this send key subroutine in this show pop-up. So now wait, command bar control, controls dot add. So we'll add a temporary. So will be equal to true. So and wait. In between this statement, let me now call on the my copy send key action. So dot caption will be equal to copy, and then dot on action, I'm now calling on my copy subroutine. So on action my copy, and then dot face ID. Face ID should be equal to 19. Let me give a brief explanation of what face IDs are. Face IDs in VBA are small pictures or icons that can be added to the command bar button, which is an item in a menu. They were phased out with the birth of Office 2007, when the main menus in all the Office applications were replaced by ribbon. However, you can still use them when creating a context menu by calling on it using VB codes. All the various icons are represented by a particular number. So here, remember I used face ID 19. Now when you look closely, you see that the number 19 represents the copy icon. So that is why I chose the number 19. Let's go back and then continue. And this time around, let me return back to the user form and run the application. Now you can see that when I perform a right click action, I get the copy spelled out here and then with this icon representing it. Let's go back and then continue with the model. So what I'm going to do now is just to copy this line of code, copy it and then paste. And this time around, instead of copy, I'm going to use right paste and use vin for it. Paste again, and this time around use cut and then change it to the letter X. Also paste it again and then change it to the letter Z. And this time around, let me change it to undo. Let me count down here again and then copy this whole line, copy it, paste it, and then instead of copy, let me use paste. And on action, I will write my. And what is the face ID for paste? Let's go back and then see if we can get the face ID for paste. 1920. So we can see that number 22 represents the face ID for paste. So let's write it, replace the face ID with 22. Let me also paste it here, and then this time around, instead of copy, let me change it to cut. And when we should go back, let's look for the scissor sign. And the scissor sign is where? 20. Okay, the scissor sign is 21. So we are going to use the face ID number 21. And for the last one, and change it to my copy or cut. Now for the next one, let us write this, let us paste it here, and this time around is undo, and we are calling on my undo. And let's go back to see undo. What is the face ID for undo? Face ID number for undo. Okay, so now I can see the undo sign here is number 128, then the redo is 129. So let me write face ID number, let me represent it with 120. Let me represent it with number 128. Okay. So now let me return back to the user form and then run the form once again. Now you can see that when I perform a right click action on the text box, I get all the actions that I have specified in my code. Now you can populate this right click action with as many items as you wish. The next thing that I would have to do is that, let's say you have more than one text box on the user form. So now, and you want to apply the same code to all of them, the right click action to all the text boxes that you have on the user form. Now let me copy this, paste. So now I have these 5 text boxes on the user form. let us run the application once more. When I right click on Textbox 1, you see that I get the pop-up context menu. But what about if I right click on Textbox number 2? I do not get the same effect. Also, if I right click on Textbox 3, 4 and 5, the reason for this is that when we come back to the user form, you would see that I only called the model in Textbox 1 change event. So let's say we change it to Textbox 2. So now let us run the code to see. When I right click on Textbox 1, nothing happens. But what about if we right click on Textbox number 2? You see that the pop-up would rather show when we right click on Textbox number 2, but not on Textbox number 1, as was previously the case. So we want to be able to add the pop-up to all the text boxes on this user form. Let's go back, and then this time around go to the Insert tab and then insert a new class model. In this class model, let me write this code that groups all the text boxes together. So let me write this public statement. So public with msforms.textbox. So this is the event that is going to group all the text boxes together. Now that I've written a public statement to group all the text boxes together, let me come down here and then select the text group and come to this drop down menu and then select on mouse up and write this code. It is basically the same code that we wrote for the user form text box change event. So we can copy this line of code, come here and then paste it in between this subroutine. Let's go back to the user form once again and then write this subroutine to be called in the user form initialize or activate event. Private subgroup text boxes. Let me declare these variables. Dim counter as integer, and then also dim object as controls. Okay, so these are my variables. So the next thing I'm going to write is for each in me.controls. For each object on the form, if the type of the object type of obj is msforms.textbox, then what should happen? And if. So if it is, then the counter will be equal to counter plus 1. Redeem plus into bracket 1 counter. Okay, and then let us set the text box counter to the text group. Let me see the text group that I specified here. Now I'm calling it on this form, so the text group. Next, and now let me set the object to be equal to nothing. Let me copy it and then call it in the user form initialize event. So let me go to the user form and then click on initialize and call. Let me comment this out, comment this out, comment this out, comment this, comment this. Let's run the code to see. Okay, compiler error, variable not defined. Oh, okay. Let me write this. Dim textbox as new class. Because I'm using the class one. Okay, so type mismatch. So it's control, not control. So now let me run it once again. Now you can see that the context menu action is present on textbox 1, textbox number 2, textbox 3, textbox 4, and then also textbox 5. So in this way you can add it to all the text boxes on the user form. So let me write something inside. Let's say okay, so now let me select it, copy, and then right click, paste, 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 and then let me, the undo would undo the last action. Now let me paste again. I'm using the keyboard shortcut, so let me use the keyboard, copy it, and then also paste it. In this way you can also use the keyboard to perform these actions. So let me select or cut and then come here and then paste. Okay, one more thing, let me change the name of this text box number 1 to, let's say, txt name, and then text box number 2 to txt address. Okay, so let me run it to see whether the effect will still be the same. Yes, so I still have the same effect on all the text boxes. This code still works even if you change the names of the text box. I hope that in this tutorial you have learned how you can easily add right-click context menu to the text box. Please do not forget to subscribe, share, and give me thumbs up to encourage me to continue to create this content that seeks to answer your pertinent VBA questions. Stay tuned in for the next tutorial. Thank you and bye bye for now.